Hello everyone, it is I, the Witch of Paint. And this week I am painting a fairy based on the Zodiac sign Cancer. This is now my 7th Zodiac fairy. We're over halfway done and I didn't even realise. Well, either way, this Zodiac goes from around the 22nd of June until the 22nd of July. According to Google, anyway. The ruling planet for the sign is the moon. Its element is water. A flower that may or may not be associated with the zodiac, according to Pinterest, is delphinium, and its symbol is a crab. So I went all out on the crab elements in the design of this fairy, allowing myself to go a little bit crazy, maybe, with it. My fairy got a big hat, a very funky shirt that has one sleeve that looks like a crab arm, while the second arm has no sleeve at all. This is accompanied by a long skirt, some moonstones here and there, a starfish on the side of his skirt, a little claw-like sort of, I don't know what you call them. They're not exactly gloves since his hands are still like visible underneath. They only cover the top of his lower arm. Yeah, he's got those in like the shape of claws, as you may or may not be able to tell once the sketch is complete. I didn't want him to have actual claws because I thought that might be just a little bit odd. Well, you'll see in a moment. Anyways, on his top I also gave him a sort of stripe of delphiniums because whether or not it really represents the zodiac, delphiniums are gorgeous blue flowers and my boy deserves only the best. Honestly, I love his funky design, and I'm glad I went a little wild with it. His pose is a sort of wide-legged crouch. I was trying to lean into a sort of crab-like pose. At one point, I even considered having his arms sort of up with sort of like his hands doing a sort of pinching motion, but I decided against it. I thought it might look a little too silly, and I wasn't going for silly with this. I was going for colourful and cool. So, now that you know what this painting is about, let's see what we can find out about the zodiac sign Cancer. Be warned, Zeus is back. Just a bit. So, thanks to our boy, Zeus, Lord of the Sky and whatever, having no shame or impulse control whatsoever, a mortal woman called Alcmene has given birth to a young kid called Heracles. Hera, the actual wife of Zeus, decided she hates this baby more than any other child that Zeus has ever had in his time as a god. She just absolutely hated Heracles. Maybe it was because he's called Heracles and therefore is kind of named after her, even though he's not even closely related to her, aside from him having her husband as his dad. But seriously, Hera, chill out. It's a kid. Just leave Heracles alone. He didn't ask for Zeus to be his dad. Anyways, this story is going to be taking place during one of the trials that Heracles has to do in order to make up for the fact that Hera drove him mad and made him kill his family. He was trying to live a happy life, Hera. Anyways, during one of these 10 difficult, impossible to do tasks, 2 of which did in the end not count because he asked for help. Oh my goodness. But anyway, we are going to be talking about the second of Heracles' tasks, which was to kill the Hydra of Lerna because it was causing trouble. This was a huge serpent-like monster with many heads, and if you cut one off, 2 more grew back. But I bet most of you already knew that. Really, for this story, this is just like a side thing. It's just the sort of setting for the story. We're not actually going to focus on Heracles and the Hydra, because they are not important. What is important is the other side character in the story, which is the Hydra's neighbour, because in the swamp there was also a giant crab, who was also known as Carcinus, or Cancer, or Carcinus, or something like that. Basically, crab in either Latin or Greek, so, you know. He was enjoying a beautiful, nice day in the swamp, and actually had no plan of getting involved with the fight that was going on between Heracles and the Hydra. But Hera had other plans. She wanted to make sure that Heracles failed the task, and also she just kinda wanted him dead. So she goes over to the giant crab, Carcinus, and asks him, "Hey, you mind helping the Hydra defeat my least favorite child on this planet?" "Yeah? Okay, thank you." Poor crab did as he was told. He went over to where Heracles was fighting with the Hydra and pinched his feet to make him fall over. This was, of course, a little bit of a nuisance to Heracles, who promptly stepped on the crab and crushed it. Now, even though it failed, Hera awarded the crab for its effort by putting it into the sky as a constellation, a la, "Yeah, it's okay, you tried." And that was the very short story of the crustacean after which this constellation has been named. A sad ending for a huge crab. And that's literally all there is to say about this crab in mythology. It shows up on Hera's orders, pinches Heracles' feet, and dies. And besides the description of it being large, nothing else was said about its appearance. It could literally have been any type of crab, any colour, any length, width, and so on. Heck, for all we know, it could have been this funky little fairy crab man. Who knows? Nobody does, because they apparently didn't care enough about this crab, apart from the fact that it was big, and Hercules crushed it with his strength. Just leave the poor crab alone. He just wanted to have a day out in the swamp, enjoy his time, his day. He probably had children or something, or a family at least. Well, rest in peace, crab. You'll forever be remembered as the crab that pinched Heracles' feet on Hera's orders. Anyways, I got a little curious about what kinds of crabs live in Greece that could be candidates for Carcinus, because, nobody actually, said what he looked like. And so I googled a list of crabs and I found an entire list of crustaceans that live in Greece. The link to that list is down below if you want to suffer through it like I did. Well, I didn't suffer. Some of those were really interesting, but I was a bit confused at the start because some of them don't have any sizes listed or anything. Anyway, there is the Potamon fluviatile, which reaches around 5 centimeters or 2 inches in length and lives in freshwater sources like, wooded streams. So that could possibly be a candidate for him, but that's a tiny crab, if you ask me. However, it has been eaten since antiquity. So people definitely had this crab around back then, which is really cool to think about for me. Like, back in the day, they were eating freshwater crabs that still exist today. It's a cool thought for me, even though I don't eat crabs. I've never eaten a crab in my life, and I don't think I will ever eat a crab because they're too cute to eat. The next largest crab that I found is the blue crab at 13 centimeters in length. But it is not native to Greece. It was introduced there in order to farm it for food. And I'm not even sure if this crab was around in ancient times in Greece, particularly, because it's native to America. So it's kind of far away, So kind of unlikely that the Greeks had it back then. But who knows? And then we've got the European lobster, which has got a body length of up to 60 centimeters or 24 inches. Now, in my opinion, that is already getting pretty close to something that might be considered a big crab or, crustacean, because this is a lobster, not a crab. But the European lobster lives in salt water, and the crab from the story was living in a swamp, so fresh water, more or less fresh water. So can't have been the European lobster, unless it sort of migrated and decided it's going to just kind of be able to live in fresh water rather than salt water. I don't know. Nah, probably unlikely. But unfortunately, there's not that many freshwater crabs in Greece, so who Carcinus was may forever remain a mystery. If, people just didn't make all of it up, because obviously that's a possibility too. Humans are just creative. They see crab and go like, big crab. And since they have freshwater crabs, they might have just, enlarged them a little bit in their imagination. Or maybe the author who put the crab into the story first, because it wasn't always fair. Maybe once upon a time he was pinched by a crab and decided his act of revenge was going to be putting that crab into the story of Heracles and the Hydra and killing it off as revenge because he was sulky or something. But that's speculation, okay? That's speculation. That's me speculating about this crab. There's literally not much known about it, okay? Now, let's talk about my crab fairy, eh? I had a lot of fun designing his looks. And yes, in the end, it did end up being a boy. For a while, I had considered making the fairy a girl, but then it just ended up looking like a boy, so oh well. I don't really mind which gender my fairy has. Now, because the sign is a water sign, I decided to have my little fairy standing at the beach. The waves of the ocean washing around his feet. His dress has many different elements of things that are sort of associated with the zodiac itself. As I've mentioned at the start, the delphinium flowers are going around the top of his dress. A sleeve that is reminiscent of a crab arm, a wavy skirt that is loosely inspired by the ocean. I gave him the claws that crabs have, but more in the form of like sort of arm protectors, I guess. So he does still actually have hands that are normal hands. It's just a piece of clothing he puts on those claws because he likes crabs. And of course, he has a cool crab hat with some googly eyes because I thought that would be fun. On his wings, I painted the symbol that represents Cancer, and the bottom wings were divided into small little spiky thingies that are supposed to be somewhat reminiscent of crab legs. And in total, that does bring his legs up to 10 if we count his normal legs, the arms, and then the 6 spiky things in the wings that are supposed to represent the other legs. Those do bring it up to 10 legs, because crabs are decapods, meaning that they have 10 legs, so to speak. So that's the 8 legs that they walk on, and then the 2, well, technically arms that are claws that they can use for picking things up, eating, and I guess pinching people in their feet. Anyways, back to the painting. Behind him, shining brightly upon the ocean waters, is the moon, and the background is in fact what I painted first, using different shades of blue from my Van Gogh watercolour palette. I painted the sky and water with a mix of Prussian blues, indigos, phthalo blue, a little bit of yellow ochre in the bottom left corner for the sort of sandy bit of the beach. Then after that first background layer dried, I went in with more indigo in order to darken up some areas that I thought were too light, especially where the moonlight isn't hitting the surface of the water or enlightening the sky. Honestly, the background on its own would have looked absolutely amazing and stunning, but I also had a fairy to paint in, and I didn't want him to just blend in with the water and sky behind him by using more blues. So he got some permanent rose, some lemon yellow, some turquoise green, a little bit of turquoise blue as well. Basically, I'm going to all out on my colours with this fairy. I'm making him very colourful and shiny, though it may be a little too bright for the dark nighttime scene that I've painted here, but the moon is shining and providing light, so, yeah, that's it. That's my excuse for this. Deal with it. I'm also aware that throughout most of this video, the crab fairy looks rather disconnected from the whole background. Plus the waves are looking a little odd because they are non-existent. Until the end of the video, where I take a big flat brush and some white gouache paint and dab on a bunch of sea foam to make the waves feel a little more real. Could I have solved the brightness issue of the fairy as well? Yes, but I didn't feel like it. I wanted this to be a fun fairy with lots of colours, and that is what I made. Cancer deserves only the best for the short and sad story Verisign gets in mythology. Plus, crabs are cool. They have 10 legs, for crying out loud. That's really cool if you ask me. Well, to be fair, 2 of those are claws and aren't used for walking, but still. Also, did you know a group of crabs is called a cast? Don't ask me why, but to me that is a little bit funny. Makes me think of like movie casts or something. Of course, there's many different species of crabs that exist. Not all crabs live in groups, obviously. Some prefer the lonely life and only come together when it's time to do the act of reproduction. But when you do get a cast of crabs, they can come in the hundreds or even thousands. Helps them stay safer, and finding a mate is easier when you're in a group. Which makes sense, obviously. Anyways, now we are nearing the end of this video, so let's take off the tape, sign the painting, and move on to the final result. I love this guy. He just looks so cool with his crab hat, and that dress he's wearing is everything to me. Not to mention his claws and the wings. Oh, I had so much fun painting him in all his crabby glory, and I've learned a lot about crabs during the making of this video as well, so that is a big plus for me. I have left you all a list of resources on the zodiac sign of Cancer, plus some different crab-related things that I stumbled upon during the research I did for the script. Full disclaimer, of course, I am not an expert on crabs, but I hope you still enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, do not forget to like the video, leave a nice and fun comment about crabs, and, of course, subscribe to the channel. Check out my social media links down below, and perhaps drop in on my Twitch account where I'm streaming every Wednesday and Friday. For the time being, I am the Witch of Paint, and I shall see you all next Sunday. Bye! Well, look what lonely crab has made it to the end of this video! Well done! Let me reward you with some outtakes. Yeah, he's got those in like claw shape things. He probably had children or something, or a family at least. A drink to the crab. His dress, the dress, of course, the dress, not the des. Especially where the moonlight is hitting the surface. Well, isn't hitting the surface, that's what I was supposed to say.